Welcome to The Unspoken Truth. I'm your host, Rob Bruss.
And live from Minnesota, I'm Edward Anderson.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a quick update on the war in Ukraine. There's been some big developments over the last couple of days. If this is your first time here, welcome. It's great to have you here. And if you're back for more, welcome back and thanks for your ongoing support. If you haven't seen this show before, this is all about going behind the news and seeing what's happening behind the story in the mainstream media and unpicking the narrative. We're available as a podcast over on Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your favorite audio content. So make sure you come on over and grab a copy of the podcast as well. And don't forget to scroll down in the description here and come on over and follow us on Twitter and also on Telegram as well. Now, over the weekend, the Kerch Bridge was attacked again. Well, that was yesterday, actually, not over the weekend. The F-16 training has been finally approved and the Ukrainians are off and on their way. And Russia have pulled out of the grain deal. So I want to kick off and talk to you about the Kerch Bridge. So it looks like 2 people were killed in the process of doing that. There is a video floating around of it, and it looks like there was multiple detonations that actually went off. When I watched the video, it looked like there was 6 detonations that happened, and you can see it in a distance. It kind of goes boop, 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 boop. And you can see that it happened at nighttime. So the footage that you're seeing here is from the next day and first thing in the morning. So let me just play the little video. We can talk about it as we're looking. So why is this such a big thing? Well, part of the issue that we've had with the Kerch Bridge is the Russians have said, do not touch the Kerch Bridge under any circumstances, or there's going to be hell to pay and there's going to be big consequences. And Putin has come out and said he needs to create an appropriate reaction to this. So you can see here's an aerial shot of what's happened on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side of the picture, you can see the roads busted there, and here's some video footage. I played this a couple of times for you, so you can see that that's completely unusable for any vehicle traffic. The Russians have come out already and said that it's going to take them about a month to repair that. And when you look at what's going on and you look at how that's been damaged, you gotta wonder what's really going on. Did they get up there on the pylon to actually do that? This is a major piece of infrastructure that's been blown up, and it's a serious thing that's happening. This is how the Russians are resupplying their troops in the southern part of Ukraine, and if this supply route goes away, there's going to be serious consequences. Everybody was worried that when Storm Shadow missiles came along to Ukraine that they were going to be used to target the bridge here, but it doesn't look like it. And then the internet's going crazy with a bunch of memes. Of course, there's Putin and his famous table that's been blown up as well, which I think is quite funny. So, you know, what are the ramifications of what's happened here with the Kerch Bridge? I think that when it first happened, it was like the ultimate red line for the Russians. And they said, if you do that, that represents an existential threat to Russia, and we are going to attack you, and we're going to do that potentially with nuclear weapons. Well, at least that's what Dmitry Medvedev said on several different occasions, but that just hasn't played out the way that we thought. And yesterday, when this bridge was destroyed, or when it was damaged as it is, as you see in the picture there, everyone kind of just went, oh yeah, cool. And the Russians even made a joke and came out and said, yeah, we blew it up. So
Humor, I like that.
Yeah, it's a sense of humor, right? So I don't really know what it actually means. What it, you know, from a resupply perspective, the train line is still working there, and so they're still able to get large amounts of supplies via train there. But if the road's not working, well, that's an inconvenience because the other side of the road is working. If they come and attack it on several different locations at several different times and cut the road off, like if they blow up the other side of the road and the train line further on or further down from where that currently is, then I would anticipate that that's actually a really serious issue as well. So that's actually a big development that's actually happened, and it might be the beginning of something more that we're about to see as well. That's kind of the indicator for me, where if they took that bridge down and they took the other side down and the railway line down and they've cut the Russians off completely, then we might see some more of a counteroffensive pushing down in the Zaporizhia region, or perhaps even over near further around to the west of that as well. So we've also had over the weekend a pretty interesting development. A couple of months ago, Biden had endorsed the plan for the Ukrainian pilots to be trained on F-16s, but we've got to go through this long-winded process with the Department of State, the State Department in America, to make sure everything's okay, that they can do that, they're not going to steal our secrets. And that's the reason that this is all taking so long, right? Because you're giving a country, in fact, if I just say the unspoken truth, you're giving the most corrupt country in the world access to our very best technology. And you're giving them access to all of the top secret technology of how we use these jets, what they're capable of, and most importantly, the strategy to actually employ them. And you're going to be training like lots and lots and lots of pilots to actually fly these things. So this is a really, really big thing that they have to consider carefully. But we do know that was a couple of months ago. That was in May, that screen grab there from the 20th of May. And here we are on the 18th of July, nearly 2 months later. And the pilots are off on their way to training. And they're off in the next, I think, from what I could gather, you can't really tell exactly. Have they left? Apparently, the screenshot there that I've got for you is of one of the fellas that's off on his way. He looks like a MiG-29 pilot. He's standing next to that jet there as well. So if that happens, we anticipate there's going to be a 5 to 6 month process of training, which means we're not going to see these jets in country until at least the new year. And at which case, all the logistics, the supply chains, and all of the training for maintenance and everything like that is going to go through as well. So, is it a big development? Is that something that was happening anyway? I'm not too sure. I can't quite decide because it was approved 2 months ago. It was ready to go, and it's taken 2 months to get approval there. I don't know. What do you think, Ed, when you think that we're going to give these the most corrupt country in the world? And I'm not saying that these people are corrupt, but it is the most corrupt country in the world. You're giving access to all of the top secret stuff.
Yeah, I think it's insanity. We shouldn't be doing anything to extend this war. They think that they're giving the Ukrainians a fighting chance. They don't have a fighting chance. This is one man's opinion, okay? I do not approve of Putin's invasion. God knows. But this war needs to end as soon as possible because I just don't think that Ukraine can win. And the sooner that they can negotiate a peace, the better position Zelensky is going to be in to get a good deal for Ukraine. So the sooner the better from on that regard. And I just think adding this kind of I don't know. I can't imagine. Our pilots go through like years.
2 years.
Training, before they're giving these guys a shortcut version. In and out in what is it, like 6 weeks or 8 weeks. I don't know enough about this to immediately make a criticism about it, I suppose.
But that's enough of a criticism right there, because like any normal person would think, look at this guy standing in front of this jet. You can learn to take off and land. He's already a pilot. You can learn to take off and land pretty easily. You can probably fly formation, no problems. But then actually employing the thing in combat, moving the switches around, getting yourself in the right position to do all of that, man, oh man, that's like the most complicated. Air combat is the most complicated thing that humans have ever created. There's nothing more complex than that. Yeah. Then you talk about air-to-air refueling, then the AWACS in your ears, and there's 3 other pilots with you, and you're bombing 4 targets at once. Like, really? Like, it's how are you going to train these guys that inside of that short time frame? And then you're going to give them all of our hardware, and you're going to give them all of our strategies and all of our tactics and everything that goes with that. And you're the most corrupt country in the world, and you're like whinging and complaining continuously that we're not supporting you enough. Like, I don't know, man.
We spend millions of dollars building these airplanes, and then we spend God knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars training pilots, and plus the time put involved. And one well-placed SAM from Russia.
That's it. It's all over. All of it's all gone.
It's gone.
Yeah. War is just ridiculous when you look at it like that in that context.
I mean, how many of these planes are we talking about? Do you know? Do we know how many planes we're talking about?
I think they would talk. No one knows, but the scuttlebutt is 3 to 4 squadrons. So you're talking anywhere from 30 to 50 jets. And, these things are worth $60 or $70 million each. The pilot training is worth probably $10 million per pilot. You're going to train 30 or 40 pilots like that. You're building a whole entire Air Force in 6 months. Are you kidding me?
Now, do you think, are these meant to be offensive weapons or defensive?
Well, they're both. Right?
Well, I know they are both, but do we have an idea what they plan on using? Do they plan on using them offensively? Are they going to send the front lines?
The reason the Ukrainian Air Force has lived as long as it has is because it's been the disposition of it. They dispersed the Air Force to all of the roadside runways. There's a whole bunch of roadside hangars, and you see aircraft launching from highways and all that sort of thing. And any jet's got the capability to do that with the right landing gear on the right surface, and I'm certain the Vipers can do that as well. But when you look at what their capabilities are, so you're going up against the Russian Su-35s and some other, 4.5 generation Russian hardware that can outrange you and outmatch you with the sensors. But it doesn't matter when you look at it on a piece of paper, are the Vipers as good as what the Russians have got? No, they're not. The Russian hardware is better on paper, but at the end of the day, it comes down to pilot training. And it comes down to the man behind the controls as to whether or not he is better than the other person on the other side of the controls. You can have all the gear. The way I describe it, you have all the gear but no idea. And that seems to be what the Russians have got. They've got all the gear but no idea. And, you know, are these things going to be decisive? Well, they'll be decisive for the troops on the ground, but are they going to get air superiority quickly as a result of having these in country? Well, maybe if you have overwhelming force there, if you're able to, you know, launch round the clock combat air patrol and get it up over Ukraine, and you've got, you know, 4 jets covering the whole country in a combat air patrol continuously, then maybe that's possible. But do you think the Russians are really going to sit idly by and allow that to happen? I don't think so, man. You're gonna see these air-to-air engagements actually happening for real, and the Russians can outrange them. They can see them from further away, and their missiles can fire from further away. It's as simple as that.
So I suppose these planes are not going to be flying out of the NATO countries, right? They're not going to be flying out of Poland. They're going to be housed inside Ukraine.
Good question, right? What if they're launching from Romania or from Poland, and they were talking about doing the training in Romania? So, you know, why are you doing that? We're going to get familiar with airspace, with the procedures, with, you know, the complexities of getting in and out of there in bad weather. There's just so many variables. That's why it takes 2 years to train a pilot, man. You can't learn to do this in like 6 months. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is how countries get dragged into wars. I mean, at what point do you consider somebody an ally of your enemy? I mean, I would have to assume that if somebody is supplying my enemy, I would consider him an enemy too. And we are already supplying Russia, Ukraine, and now we're escalating it now with weapons that we initially said we would never give them, and now we're giving them all these offensive weapons. And we would never give them, I don't know what's next, a Raptor? Oh yeah, we would never give them a fleet of Raptors. But who knows? Maybe whether that's, I don't know. It's just this feels now. Look, this has been in the works for several months, right? You don't just show up one day and get the jet. So this has been in the works for about probably 6 months or 8 months, right?
Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah.
Right. So they started this process back when maybe people were enthusiastic and people would think, oh yeah, we're behind Zelensky, we're behind the Ukrainian mafia, we're behind them because we got to defeat. I think at this point, I think there's probably a little bit of buyer's remorse going on by NATO, and and at this point they're probably saying, you know what, maybe we should just let it die in the vine, let it run its natural course, let it we'll stop giving the antibiotics and just let it play out on its own. But yeah, we have to give them these jets because we promised them, and they're already there. So I don't know. I just get the sense that this war is over, but nobody's saying it yet.
Let me tell you how it could be over much quicker. So one of the things that I see in the media all the time, because aviation's been a lifelong passion of mine, and military aviation and that as well. I know a lot about it. I got to play with it for real for a long time in the military, and I got to do a bunch of different things after the military as well. I was watching some stock footage the other day. Every now and then, or sort of file footage rather, not stock footage. Every now and then you see the American Air Force go and work with the Israelis. And there was some footage a while back now, it was a couple of years ago, where there's American B-52s and they form up. So they must be transiting from Europe back to Diego Garcia or back to Guam, something like that. They're tracking south, right? And they form up with the Israeli Air Force en route. And the rhetoric from the reporter is that nuclear-capable B-52 bombers are on exercise with the Israeli Air Force, and they always use nuclear capable. Now, every fighter jet in every inventory of every air force in the world is nuclear capable, because all we need to do is to put a dumb bomb on there and they're unguided. But these days we can put JDAM kits on the nukes and they can use them as JDAMs. And Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, came out just about a week ago and he said, if those F-16s do arrive in Ukraine, we're going to do our best to destroy them. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that we don't know that every time you launch one of those, that it doesn't have a nuke on it. And because of that, we're going to treat it like it has. So that's like an escalation of rhetoric that we haven't heard before. And that's not something that's been widely reported, because the mainstream media would never come out and say that an F-16 is a nuclear capable fighter. They would never say that. Because as soon as you say that, we're like, we're down the nuclear. How did that escalate so quickly? But here we are. The Viper, one of the Viper missions. If you go and read books about Viper pilots and you listen to podcasts and watch videos about F-16 pilots, they all say that one of the best missions that they would train to is the nuclear mission. And the reason that these guys like it so much is because you've got to be within plus or minus 3 seconds of your time on target because of what you're doing, right? And when you think about it, it's not just one jet that is going with a nuke. There's a package, right? It's a flight of 4, or it's a squadron of them that are all going out there, right? So there's aircraft protecting the bomb trucks, and there's aircraft suppressing enemy air defenses as they go to protect everybody else as well. And then there might be a package of 4 aircraft that have got 2 nukes on them each, and they're going after a particular target. So, other Russians looking at that going, well, we know how the Americans employ their Vipers. We know how NATO employ their Vipers because it's the most prolific fighter jet in the world. So what does that actually mean to us? Is that something that the Ukrainians are actually going to be training to in the event that the Russian Air Force try and use overwhelming force to shut this down? These things might become completely and totally irrelevant on the first day that they're there because they're completely destroyed because the Russians put every single air asset that they've got there to go and destroy them, and they destroy them from 100 miles away, for heaven's sake. Like, then what? That's what you said, Ed. This war is over before it's really started.
Yeah. Well, look, I can see Lavrov's point of view, and because I would have the exact same point of view if I were in his shoes. I would make the assumption that they have nuclear weapons because
particularly if they're launching from Romania or Poland.
Yeah.
How do you know they're NATO countries, right? How do you know they haven't wheeled out the nuke and put it onto the rack and then off we go? How do you know?
So listen, we know now that China now is starting to build a base in Cuba, right off our shore. Now, if I were the general in charge of keeping my eye on Cuba, I'd be watching those satellite photos and those U-4 spy plane photos to see whether they have any planes that could deliver. I'd be the same thing.
Same thing, right? If you're going to build an airbase there and you've got the capability to put your fighter jets in there, you're literally just moments away from launching and doing something that's unprovoked. We'll see the missile launch. We see the aircraft launch. Sibers in space can see all of that stuff. But the reality is, you just don't know what the reaction is going to be. And it goes to the very heart of what you're talking about, Ed, when you say that it's very easy for people to get involved in this. Every European country that has F-16s putting their hand up to say, we'll train them, we'll help them, come and use our stuff, come and use our training facilities, we'll help you. But then they're all being dragged into the war without realizing. It's as if they don't know the second and third order effects of what they're actually doing. They haven't got the foresight to see what's actually happening. Or maybe they do, or maybe that's the whole plan. Maybe that's the whole point. I don't know. It's very hard to see.
I don't know. I think you're giving them way too much credit for being that clever. No, I think they are so blinded by this anti-Putin rhetoric that they've got this myopic view of the world, and they've got tunnel vision, right? That we have to get rid of Putin. We have to get rid of Putin. We have to, why is Putin such a bad guy? Now look, I'm not a Putin.
You're not a Putin apologist or a bro.
Exactly. But listen, please, let's have a rational, checklist of things that we don't like Putin for. Okay?
Well, he's a gangster, and I could. There's a list as long as your arm of things that he's a shitbag for. But equally, there's a list as long as your arm for Joe Biden and all the other politicians on every side. So
there you go. You beat me to it. Putin isn't guilty of that many more things that are nefarious that our own politicians aren't also. Oh, Putin's a murderer. Hey, well, someone could argue that our presidents or our past 5 presidents have all been murderers in a lot of ways.
I watched I was watching a show on the weekend. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Jack Ryan.
Yeah, I've seen the YouTube clips. I've never watched the actual show.
The series is really good. Yeah, if you like those Tom Clancy books, it really brings it to life. And John Krasinski's a really great actor. He does a good thing in there. But there's a great line in there because it's kind of based on reality, but sort of not. It's fictitious all at the same time. And this CIA lone wolf spy dude going to rescue the world. But there's a bad dude that they catch in there. There's a bad guy, and the boss of the CIA catches him in this sting, and it's a bit shit in some ways, but the dialogue is good and the actors are really good, but it's a bit predictable. You're like, come on, man, she's going to arrest him here. It's predictable, right? Anyway, one of the lines that he says in there is that you have the luxury of looking at the world as good guys and bad guys. The world is not good guys and bad
Right.
guys. That's not how the world is. And that's exactly what you're describing, like why is everybody so upset with Putin? Why, and we're not Putin apologists or condoning or anything that he's doing, nothing like that. No way, because all leaders are as bad as each other. There are no good ones. So it's really interesting in that respect. There's, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, finish your thought, because mine is a little off topic.
No, that was it. I was just going to close the loop on
that. I saw a YouTube video the other day. I got random. I think I subscribed to this Russian girl a while ago. She lives in St. Petersburg, and I really want to see St. Petersburg someday. So I like everything. St. Petersburg is on my to-do list. It's on my bucket list. I want to see it. And so she had this one video where recently they had every year in St. Petersburg, they have a tradition where they hold a huge, massive graduation party for all of the students who are graduating from college. And it's a nationwide thing. They can come from anywhere around the world, but it's mostly, the local college kids, right? And one of the festivities is what they call the Scarlet Sails event. And it's a sailboats, because, St. Petersburg is like Venice, right? There are canals everywhere. It's a water town. And they have this parade of scarlet sailboats, with red sails, right? But they got lights on it, and it's a beautiful parade. And they're showing some of the parties surrounding that event, and they go into. And I'd encourage everyone, do a YouTube search. I should think of her name. Maybe I'll put a link below to that video, and you'll see what I want you to look for are these parties with all these young people in it. And these are all young people, they're smiling. They've got straight teeth. You don't see anybody with,
no one's got blue hair and they're 80 kilos overweight.
Right. They're not promoting gender weirdness. These are just normal, happy teenagers. And if you look at, they're enjoying life and their future is in front of them. These are people who are brought up, with traditional values. And this is what a society of traditional values looks like. These young, healthy, you don't see a bunch of obese lesbians convincing you that they're 10. They're all, good looking, young, happy people. And I encourage you to watch that. And then look at any other American-based rally. And there's some arguments to be made here for traditional-based societies. And
what the thing that makes me so upset about those types of videos, because I follow a couple of Russian YouTubers as well. I follow he's a young guy, and he left when the mobilization first happened, and he kind of just talks about his life and what happens, and he's just a completely normal dude, right? Like anyone else.
The guy with the long hair.
Yeah, he's got long hair and glasses and stuff.
Yeah,
he's I really like that guy. I don't kind of agree with a lot of what he says, but I like the way that he's able to express himself, and it's nice to see a different point of view and whatnot as well. Yeah, exactly. And I got to follow a couple of other Russian girls as well on YouTube and just watch. They're traveling around the world and just comparing, what it's like here versus back home, etc. But the thing that pisses me off most about all of that is that they're the people that pay the price. Yeah. The people that pay the price for all of these old, corrupt gangster men are the youngest, most productive members of society. And that's why I always say that war is a complete and total failure of humanity. Because no old person in their right mind, you and I are getting a little bit older in our lives, but the last thing that you want to do is be sending young 20-year-old people to war. But that's what they do, and they do that willingly, and they send them into a meat grinder, and they just get slaughtered at scale. And it's just it's an absolute tragedy. And that's all because two old men can't sit down and talk to each other. It's just ridiculous, man. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I saw a stat the other day in one of these videos that said the number of young men between the ages of 18 and 30, military age men, right? I guess a year ago in Russia, it was, I forget the exact number, but I remember thinking, geez, that's like a third of what they had this time last year.
Yeah, because most of them have been sent to the front, and a lot of them have been destroyed in the meat grinder. Yep. So it's just tragic, man. You're destroying the base of your country and the most productive members of your society because they got their whole lives ahead of them, and you're just killing them all in a war. It's just crazy. What I would say, my message to people watching is, if you're a military-age male, do not, under any circumstances, join the military. Do not. Don't. There's no such thing as patriotism anymore. There's no such thing as fighting for your country. There's no such thing as doing the right thing or being of service. And if you're in the military, get out. Because the politicians that are going to send you to war are the worst politicians that we've ever had in our entire history. They're the worst. And why would you ever give yourself to what Joe Biden tells you to do or what Vladimir Putin tells you to do, for heaven's sake? Just don't be there. Don't be in the military. And that's why they have to conscript people. That's why they have to mobilize people in Ukraine and Russia, because everybody is going, I'm not doing that. I'm not going there. And that's why more than about 1 million people left Russia. Man, they left. Yeah. 1 million people are like, fuck that. I'm not doing that. And that's one way you can resist these political idiots, because, and then I think of it here in Australia. If we end up in a shooting war with China and Anthony Albanese is like, oh no, we're going to mobilize everybody. Whatever you do, don't go. Don't go. Don't give yourself to that cause. It's not a cause worth fighting for. It's not a cause Anthony Albanese is going to send himself or his, he doesn't even have kids, to send people that he cares about to war. He's going to send you. He doesn't care about you. You're just an instrument of his political gain. It's just horrible. Whatever you do, do not join the military under no circumstances. And if you're there, get out, is what I say.
Yeah, because once you're in the military, it's not like you can pick and choose which
war you're going to.
Yeah, you go wherever you're going. So even if you think it's an unjust war or unjust battle,
bad luck. Yeah, bad luck. All right, let's round out this little report. The other piece of news coming out of Ukraine is the Russians have pulled out of the Black Sea grain deal. So if you don't know, folks, all of the grain from Ukraine comes out of Odessa and heads to Turkey and then out of the Black Sea, because Turkey control the choke point there in and out of it. And they needed escorts, or they needed to have the shipping routes demined, so there's no mines there. And the whole reason that the shipping stopped is because the insurance companies wouldn't insure the ships or the cargo, because they couldn't guarantee the safety of the ships. But the Ukrainians have come out and said, whatever, we're going to go anyway. And the captains of the ships, according to the Ukrainian propaganda, have said, it's all right, we'll just go anyway. Don't worry about it. We don't need to go. But if something happens and a mine collects one of those ships, it's going to be big trouble. When I think about it, Ukraine is one of the biggest grain producers in the world, and this is the lifeblood of their economy. It's a very, very important thing to keep their economy going, and if it stops, it's a really good way of the Russians imposing sanctions on them without actually imposing sanctions. I'm not agreeing to any deal with you because you're the enemy. So it's a version of sanctions that the Russians are actually putting on Ukraine, and all of a sudden nobody likes it, but we've been sanctioning Russia to, up the wazoo for the last 12 months, 18 months, and, they're like, well, whatever, bring it, sort of thing. One other interesting stat, and I want to close out with this, Ed, is that in the next 12 months, I think it's the next 12 months, or it might be the next quarter, which rounds out the next 12 months, is the Russians will become the largest producer of oil in the world, only second to Saudi Arabia. So the Saudis are the biggest producer, and now the Russians are going to be the biggest producers. And this whole war is just a giant circle jerk, because the Russians are selling the oil to the Indians and the Chinese. It's been refined into the necessary petroleum products that come from the oil, and then it's been sold back to the Europeans. And then the money that the Russians get from the Indians and the Chinese and the oil purchasers is funding the war, but then the Europeans are buying those products from the Indians and the Chinese. That's funding the Russian war machine, and now they're complaining about giving the Ukrainians weapons. Oh, we don't have any weapons. Well, stop funding the Russian war. Stop buying the cheap oil. Stop doing all of those things. If we were serious about this, we could end it. And it brings me to the final point that I wanted to say today. Donald Trump had an extended interview on Fox Business with Maria, I can't remember her surname, over the week. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and there's two parts to it if you look for it on YouTube. And how are you going to end the war in Ukraine? And he said, well, I'm going to tell them, put your weapons down, both of you. And come to the negotiating table, and if you don't come to the negotiating table, Mr. Putin, I'm going to give Ukraine more weapons than you've ever seen before. And so he's going to create overwhelming force to do that. Well, maybe they could do that, but the problem with all of that is that they just don't have the trained manpower to actually deal with that. So the only way to actually do that is to get NATO involved or put the Americans in there and end it once and for all. And I'm like, really? That's not Trump ending the war. Putin's just going to go, I'm not coming to the negotiating table. Fuck off. Piss off, man. Fuck you and your negotiating. This is not New York real estate. This is my country. and this is the future of my country and the future of the Russian population. No, I'm not coming to the negotiating table. I'm not doing it. Put all the weapons you want in there. I don't care. I got more nuclear weapons than you. Do it. Go. Like, he's living in a dream world, and if people are buying into the rhetoric of what Trump's saying, I think that's a categorical mistake, man.
Well, I have not seen that interview. This is the first time I'm hearing that, because I've got my own 24-hour plan to end the war in Ukraine, and it's the exact opposite of that. I would stop funding. I would call Zelensky on the sly. It wouldn't be a public announcement, on the sly, and that's no more stuff.
Why would you go the other way and say, I'm going to give you 50 times more stuff? Why would you do that?
They're running out of bodies. They're running out of people to pull the triggers.
That's right. They just don't have the people to do it.
So what are we going to do? So is there a solution to give them some of our bodies, some of our soldiers? All right, that should be a red line for every American. But look, this kind of thing is best solved, quietly, behind, not in front of a microphone, but through private phone calls. With just the right incentives. Say, listen, and you got to be willing to give credit away. Say, listen, I'll make you the good guy, so you'll end up getting that Pulitzer Prize, or Nobel Prize, whatever it's called. So you will get that Peace Prize. I'll make it look like so. And I don't need the credit. That's the way the thing. That's the way I would do it. Just do it on the sly, and just use carrots and sticks. And we have a lot of carrots and sticks. We could solve this. I don't think it's that complicated for somebody with a little bit of imagination and a little bit of, a couple of good solid brass balls. I think. Yeah,
you need some balls to do it. Yeah, that's the thing that's missing there, isn't it? There's one final thing that I'll add to here is I'll put a link in the description, folks, I'll get Ed's link as well, and we'll put that in there to some of those Russian bloggers so you can see for yourself. But I'll put a link to a channel called CIVDIV, CIVDIV. And he's the fellow that runs that channel. He's an ex-US Marine. He's an infantry guy. He got out of the Marines, and I think he was fighting in Syria or something like that. But then he went to Ukraine, and he's not fighting in Ukraine, but what he is doing is training Ukrainian soldiers. And so he trains these folks, and he trains some of these, what do you call them? They're the foreign soldiers that go there to the foreign battalions, whatever they're called. I can't remember.
Foreign Legion.
Yeah, they're like the Ukrainian version of that, right? So they're just foreign fighters that volunteer, and they go into those regiments and those brigades. So, yeah, that's the way to describe it. But they're paid by the Ukrainian government, right? So they come into the Ukrainian ecosystem, so they're not considered mercenaries. They're not fighting on somebody else's soil without their authority. So it's actually all legit. They're part of the army. Anyway, he trains these people, puts them through these courses, and then they go away and they go fighting. And of course, they go back to him and say, hey, here's some footage of what we've been doing. The training was really good. And he puts the videos together, and he compiles the videos and puts them on YouTube. And just about every video that you see, there's losses. So these soldiers are going to the front line. They're, patrolling up to this little town. It looks like a video game, and they go in there, and then the Russians are shooting at them, and then they've got to fire and move, and they've got to bound forward, and they're doing all sorts of infantry stuff. But you'll see inevitably at some point during the video, someone gets wounded or someone gets killed. And there's some videos there of some house-to-house fighting. You don't see the inside, but you see the outside of the security detail outside, and they're shooting into the windows, and they got to kick the door in, and there's Russians on the other side of the door, and the lead guy gets clipped. And then there's some other footage later on where that same patrol comes out, and then two more of them are killed the same day. So they lose 3 people in one day to an artillery strike. So one guy's killed in the close quarters fighting, another 2 guys are killed in some artillery strikes later in the day. And there's some footage of people driving around at high speed across these fields, shooting 50 cals, running and gunning as they go, and then they bomb burst out the back of these Huskies into the tree lines, and they're taking artillery fire, and the artillery fire airbursts shrapnel, and one guy has his neck broken. And you look at this, and you watch half a dozen of these videos, and you just be scratching your head thinking, man, every patrol they go out on, somebody is like getting clipped or killed or something. It's like some really serious stuff. So to understand the scale of the losses it's just very, very hard to understand. I think of it back when I was in a battalion. You're in a battalion, then you're in a platoon, you're in a section, and there's 9 of us. So every time you go out on a patrol, one person's not coming back, or one person is going away and being backloaded because they've been injured. So a new person comes forward. So how can you have any continuity of forces and be able to fight effectively when there's continuously new people in there? And I promise you, if you just watch half a dozen videos on that channel, you'll see what's going on. And it's very, very serious. The Ukrainians are trained properly by these foreigners, like the guy, that US Marine, he knows what he's doing, and these people are trained properly. You see him firing, moving properly. You see him covering each other properly. And it's really good to see that they've got the training they need to try and stay alive as long as they can. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there's just overwhelming numbers on the Russian side that actually cause all of these problems. I don't think this is going away anytime soon. And F-16s or not, I think this conflict is being prolonged deliberately. And this has happened over an extended period of time over the last 18 months when it could have been over within the first couple of months, which is an absolute tragedy. But that's our thoughts for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've got some thoughts on all of this, make sure you pop them down below in the comments, and we'll like to engage with you there as well. If you've got any questions at all, please leave them there as well. Don't forget to come on over to Telegram and to Twitter, and make sure you download it as a podcast. All right, Ed, let's get it out of here. I'll see you in the next one, mate. Bye for now.